So now that we know what an if statement is and how it works, we're going to look at making it a little better. First thing we want to do is if we want to look at this, remember if statements are built on a condition, okay? Oh, there's your condition. So a condition being either true or false. If it's true, execute the code between the brackets. If it's false, skip and move on. So right now our condition is set 100 is greater than 1000. Well, that's kind of a silly condition because of course we know that 100 is not greater than 1000. That's false. What we actually want to do is make our program a little more robust to our gear program, and we want to change a couple things. First thing we want to do is we want to replace that 100 with int speed, because that's what we're actually taking a look at. We want to say int speed is greater than, and we'll just take this 1000. Let's go take a look at our int speed. And 0 to 300 is a shuttle, so greater than 300 will be the enterprise. So we're going to say if int speed is greater than 300, then we want to sys.out.println, and we'll replace this as true with enterprise. Okay, so now that's taken care of. So now enterprise will be displayed if int speed. We better uncomment out this line. Okay, so now int speed is going to be collected as user input. It's going to be more robust. Now we've got dynamic input from the user. So if we compile and run this, and we're going to go ahead and enter in a speed of, whenever you're checking speeds, it's a really good idea to, I like to check the surrounding speed. So we're going to enter 299, 300, 301. So 299, setting the value, I shouldn't get anything. I should get no output. And out of if, that's the same as no output. That's fine. We're going to run it again. 300 again should be out of if. So we'll just put in 300 there. And there's our out of if. Run it one more time. This time I'm going to end 301, and I should get the output of enterprise. So I'll put in a 301 there, and click OK. And there's the enterprise. So cool, this works, and it's staying true to my key right here that if I'm in space, which right now we'll assume that we are, speed is 0 to 300, that's going to be a shuttle, and greater than 300, might as well just key that in right there, greater than 300 is going to be the enterprise. Okay, so we see one of our first problems with the if statement. In the if statement, it can only check one condition, and that's fine. You might just be looking for one condition. You might only be interested in checking a single variable, a single condition, having one output. Many times, though, we're looking for multiple conditions. In other words, well, what if the speed is less than 300, which would be 299? Let's see. Yep, if int speed is greater than 300. So what if the speed is 300, 299, 1, negative 17? We don't just want to have nothing happen. We actually want to display something. In this case, what we want to display is sys.out.println. We'll go ahead and take that. And we want it to be space shuttle. So we're going to replace that enterprise with space shuttle. So now we get two possible outputs. The first output is enterprise, the second one is space shuttle. Well, what we want to look at whenever we're talking about space shuttle is that's the second option. Okay? In other words, if the speed is not greater than 300, then what? Well, how we do that then what is called the else. And here's how the else works. You want to go ahead and, there's a lot of setups for this, but the first thing you want to do is you want to close off that if. Open curly bracket, and again, there's a lot of different ways to set these up. This is the way I always choose. So there's my if. Okay, there's my open curly bracket. Make sure it has a closed curly bracket. These things can get really hairy if you do not pay attention to them. So we're going to open curly bracket, close curly bracket. There's my if. And then I'm going to type in else and open curly bracket again. Okay? Now you're going to notice the else is kind of special here. And the first thing you'll notice about the else is, number one, there's no condition there. Okay, so what the else does, the else is a catch-all. And what that means is, oops, can't put that in there. That's Visual Basic comment. Okay, the else is a catch-all, which means that it doesn't look at a condition. It says, look, anything in the else we're going to execute. So anything between this curly bracket right here and this curly bracket is going to be executed if this is false. If this is true, we just execute this code and leave. So our else is a catch-all. It's also optional, which means that as you saw, we don't need the else. It doesn't have to be there. It's just a good option to have. So it is going to be optional. It requires an if. Okay, so it's going to require an if. It can't just sit out there. You can't just have an else sitting out there floating nowhere in code. It has to have this is part of an if statement. So this is part of the if statement. If statement begins here, ends here. The else is part of this if. So they do go together. You require an if. And again, I'm going to mention no condition. So it doesn't check anything. Okay? It doesn't look and see if something is true or false. It just runs. If you get to the else, it's going to execute. So what does this actually look like in code? Well, if we compile and run it, we're going to enter in a couple speeds here. And the first speed I'm going to enter in is, we'll do our 299 again. And we'll go ahead and 299. So this time, and let's look at what's going to happen. Set your expectations. Once I click enter, whatever's that value, 299 is going to come back as a string, held, converted to an integer, held in int speed. If 299 is greater than 300, this will become false. So we don't do the code between the curly brackets. We go straight down to the else. The else doesn't check anything, so it just runs code. That's what we're going to do. We're going to click OK, and space shuttle. There's your output. If we run it again, do the same thing. We're going to look at 300. And we're going to click OK right there. And there's your space shuttle. Okay, so that worked. And we're going to run it one more time. We're going to put our 300. Pay attention to what happens at the 300, because once we enter that 300, we're going to get the enterprise. And oh, did I not? Oh, I'm sorry. It has to be 301. Okay, so we'll run it, put 301 in there. Because remember, int speed, our 300 is not greater than 300. So that would be a false statement. We're going to do 301. There we go. There's, well, now that didn't work either. What went wrong there? Um, 301. Oh, it's got to be less than. I'm sorry. Okay, so a lot of goofy stuff going on there. There, yep, that was working right. So 301 is greater than 300. So, and we're going to enter our 301. There's the enterprise. You notice that space shuttle is not displayed. Why? Because if this is true, it stops. Runs code from here to here and then completely leaves the if statement, runs down to 405, or line 45, executes the code after 45, which brings up 51. That's it. So now we're starting to build on our if statement. We've got the if and the else statement.